Hi guys, welcome to another review. Today I'm going to talk about a game I've been really wanting to review for a while, Project Wingman. Project Wingman is a flight action game that was heavily inspired by the Ace Combat franchise. Now, for the record, I've never actually played an Ace Combat game in my life. The only things I know about it are from scrolling the wikis reading lore at 3 AM and from funny man videos on the internet, so I'll keep the comparisons to a minimum. Starting off with a quick background, Project Wingman takes place in the far future after a global volcanic cataclysm devastated the world. Volcanic winter, famine, political instability, the whole shebang. Although California was separated from the rest of North America, so overall a net neutral. Civilization eventually re-established itself after the cataclysm and international relations resumed, centered around a new resource unearthed by the calamity, cordium. This is basically the unobtainium of this world. This shit can allow you to make anything that the plot needs, like railguns or giant flying battleships. Because cordium is so valuable after the calamity, a multinational organization called the Pacific Federation expanded its control over the Ring of Fire in order to basically get a monopoly over it. Cascadia, one of the member states richest with this resource, decides to break away from the Federation after they decide to use its cordium for conquest instead of powering oat milk latte makers. And this war for independence is the focal point of the game's plot. You play as Monarch, a pilot working for the mercenary company Sicario. Accompanying you are the other members of Hitman Team, Comic, and Diplomat. Together, along with some other notable side characters like Galaxy, President, and Kaiser, Sicario, lured in by the sweet stench of blood money, decides to help the Cascadians in the war effort against the Federation. But we'll talk a bit more about that later. The game features two modes, Campaign and Conquest, with the campaign being the real meat of the game, and Conquest serving as a roguelike mode to add more replayability. The campaign consists of 21 missions and will take around 10 hours to complete. Missions are structured simply but effectively. While you might have some missions where you have a boss battle or need to attack specific targets, mainly you just go in and shoot every single thing that has a green box. But this is fine because the gameplay is just fun as fuck. As you've been seeing on screen, Project Wingman isn't a simulator. This isn't DCS where you have to go to aviation school just to learn how to take off. It's an arcade-style game that basically runs on triple distilled rule of cool. The goal is to make you feel as badass as possible. By default, every plane carries an entire arsenal of missiles, and these aren't even your special missiles. You can also equip 3 different special weapons, like rockets, bombs, long-range missiles, multi-launch air-to-air or ground missiles, or different types of gun pods. Unfortunately, a lot of these weapons are overshadowed by just how damn good missiles are. Why use something that requires patience, good aim, and a fully developed prefrontal cortex when you can just equip your MLAAs, lock on, and fire and forget at 6 different targets? One thing they could have done to make bombs more useful would be to add smart bombs. Bombs that can lock onto a target as long as you get into the right position to release them, or something like that. Maybe there's some realism reason why they didn't do this, but I feel like this game goes into enough sci-fi elements to justify adding weapons like these. I mean, hell, the game has something called the Angle of Attack Limiter, and this name is a little weird because I'm not sure what it is limiting. This thing might as well be called the Laws of Physics Breaker because it basically allows you to immediately stop and rotate your plane 360 degrees in midair. This thing is awesome and allows you to do some really cool moves, but it's a good thing this game isn't realistic because if you've seen shows like The Expanse, you probably have a good idea of what the massive G-forces this thing would do to the human body. Speaking of the rule of cool though, Jose Pavli's score is just... Okay, so most of the time the music sits in the background and just complements the gameplay really well, right? I'm talking about tracks like Midnight Light, which perfectly complement the more sneaky nature of the mission. This stuff is pretty good, but it isn't going to make me jizz my pants. But when the game really wants to make you feel something, the music just rises to the next level. I'm talking emotional tracks like Kings, or making you feel like an absolute badass with Showdown. This is the type of stuff that I'll add to my Spotify playlist and just listen to while out and about. It's so good. The use of music in this game is a great demonstration of just how much a good score can elevate a piece of work. I'm glad to see that the composer, Jose Pavli, is working on more projects like Dawn Arrow War. Really excited to hear what he comes up with. Okay, so the story. Honestly, not that bad. Going in, I heard the story was pretty mid, but maybe this lowered my expectations too much. If you're looking for a story-focused game, this really isn't it, but I did actually enjoy the story for what it was. The characters had some good moments, and while you play as a typical mute protagonist, I thought that the overall plot and conflict was interesting enough. Without getting too much into the plot, I thought it was really interesting seeing the perspectives of the members of Sicario change over the course of the game. While they aren't initially invested in the conflict, seeing it as just a contract, the members of Sicario gradually get more and more devoted to the Cascadians' cause as a result of the struggles they face. I also liked Monarch's rival and the main villain pilot of the game, Crimson One. However, I feel like we didn't really get to know him too well until the end of the game, so I feel like while he was a decent bad guy to face, exuding cockiness and being quite unhinged, we don't really get to know him well until the game is basically over. I think you could have talked a bit more during your encounters with him early in the game to build up the character more. The voice acting is also pretty solid, but there aren't any cutscenes. The closest you'll get to one is a pre-mission briefing where Galaxy tells you the situation and outlines what you're going to do while a hologram type map shows it. I was fine with this personally, but if you're the type of person that needs to put a face to a name, I suppose it might bother you. Overall, the campaign is great. It does a great job at making you feel like a complete badass, especially in those really bombastic moments where the music and overall composition of the scene really gets you raring to get into the fight. Those moments where you get both your allies and your enemies commenting on the radio about how skilled and dangerous you are, the music is blasting, lock-on sirens are going off, missiles are flying everywhere, it's just a fun time. Alright, now Conquest, on the other hand, is quite a bit different. It's essentially a roguelike mode where you try to free all of Cascadia, moving from one region to the next. Each region gives you some credit that you can use between missions to buy friendly AI planes. Some zones also give you Cordium engines which allow you to spawn in and upgrade airships. As you play, you'll increase your alert level, which will increase the number and difficulty of enemy planes. And in roguelite fashion, when you die, you have to start this whole process over again. Playing this mode earns you prestige points which carry over when you die and can be used to permanently unlock new planes in the Conquest mode. However, you only start with the basic plane from the beginning of the campaign and have to grind up to unlock the better ones. And besides the planes, there isn't really anything to unlock between runs, so there wasn't an incentive to really play this mode. There are like 3 unique planes, but I didn't really care about those at all. Honestly, while the Conquest mode was added to increase replayability, I feel like the campaign is actually more replayable than it. There are some really fun missions in the campaign like Cold War or Presidia that really scratch that itch when I get cravings for this game. The Conquest missions just don't have the emotional weight that the campaign ones do. It just feels like pointlessly killing hordes of planes. You can also replay any campaign mission on a whim once you've unlocked it once, and you can easily change the difficulty as well. There are even extra modifiers that you can add on to make things more challenging, like increasing the number of enemies that spawn or making it so that you can only use your main gun. One problem I have with the progression in this game is that I feel like the endgame planes cost a little too much to unlock in each mode. Grinding prestige points or money to unlock planes in Conquest or Campaign is a bit too grindy. For example, by grinding the most optimal mission in the campaign, it would probably take you around 3 to 6 hours to get all the planes in the game after having beaten the campaign. Once you've beaten the game, you're essentially just replaying missions, so there's no real fun added by gating the overpowered endgame planes so hard. It just adds padding to the playtime. Now, while there are ways to get around this, I recommend you at least play the campaign normally before you do them. Graphically, the game looks really good, especially considering it was all done by 1 or 2 guys. The planes are the center of the show here, and they all look amazing. However, if you fly close to the ground on some of the city maps, you can see that the surfaces aren't that detailed, even on high settings. But as I said, this only really becomes noticeable if you fly really close to these urban environments, which exist on only a few missions. The scenes look really impressive overall, especially when the environment comes into play. You have missions where you're flying through a thunderstorm, during which lightning flashes light up the clouds in the ocean. The volumetric clouds also add a ton of visual variety to the levels, When you dive through them chasing an enemy and your screen starts to shake from the turbulence and you can't see anything, it adds a little bit of tension during a dogfight since you often worry about coming out of the clouds too fast and close to the ground. They also change the lighting of the level. Underneath them, things might be dark and rainy, but breaking out through the top of them reveals a clear sunny sky. In first-person mode, going through the clouds and rain also leaves streaks of water on your canopy, and I know this is an arcadey game, but these little details really enhance the immersion and enjoyment of the game for me. The only issue I really have with the environmental detail is how it's used in some of the later levels to depict the destruction caused by certain events that happen during the story. The amount of orange used here blows Battlefield 3's blue filter out of the water, so much that it's understandably become a bit of a meme in the community. The game also runs in VR as well, but my computer isn't able to handle it very well, especially on the higher resolution Quest 2, which I use currently. On my old Windows Mixed Reality headset though, I was able to play it a little and it was decent fun, yet it still didn't run the best, but this is all because of my computer, not the game, as far as I can tell. My PC is only barely VR capable, so I'm pretty sure trying to run Project Wingman in VR was just going a bridge too far. So I think if you have a PC that can handle it and want a flight game to try out, this would be a great game to pick up. All in all, Project Wingman is both very fun and an impressive game, especially considering it was only made by like 3 people. Seriously, how many games that both look and play this good and have VR support do you know that were made by 3 people? The gameplay and the epic feelings that certain missions give me has had me coming back for more well after beating the campaign. If you're interested, definitely pick this one up. Even if you haven't played an arcade flight game before, this is a great point to jump in, as I hadn't really even played one on PC before, and I had a blast. Thank you guys for watching this review. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, subscribe, and comment. And if you're a longtime subscriber or are just interested in more of my content, I recently created a second channel where I'm going to be posting anything I want to make that doesn't really fit with the video game review vibe of this channel. I'm going to have recordings of my stream there, as well as highlights. And I also plan on doing some more creative content like discussions of TV shows, anime, maybe some games, and random memes I come up with. So if you're interested, a button should be on screen somewhere to subscribe now, as well as some video recommendations from YouTube. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.